Even more destruction was waiting on and under the Atlantic Ocean as Germany pressed its Unterseeboots, its submarines, into the battle. German submarines, U-boats, patrolled the Atlantic, firing torpedoes on merchant ships trying to deliver supplies to the Allies. It aroused the anger of Americans in particular because they felt that this was a violation of the principle of the freedom of the seas, long a cornerstone of United States foreign policy. Germany then launched a U-boat blockade in response to the British blockade along the German coast, which in theory prevented contraband, weapons, and military supplies from reaching Germany. But the British definition of contraband was wide-sweeping, including food and fertilizer for crops. 750,000 Germans died of starvation during the British blockade. 75,000 people lost their lives due to German submarine warfare.
America's attitude changed after the sinking of the Lusitania. The British ship was sunk by a German U-boat. 1,198 people were killed, 128 of them were Americans. Many more ships were sunk, killing more Americans. This was one of the many reasons that the U.S. joined the war. Wilson refused to overreact. Quote, "There is such a thing as a man being too proud to fight. There is such a thing as a nation being so right. It does not need to convince the others by force that it is right." Wilson has warned that the U.S. would hold the German government strictly accountable for any violations of American rights. Like on the boat when the first torpedo hit.
It was crazy. People were screaming, jumping off of the boat. It was so crowded.
And what did you do?
Well, I was really lucky because I actually got on a lifeboat.
Dad was one of the men in the fishing boats trying to save the people on the Lusitania?
Yes, he was fishing for his restaurant that day. He said it was one of the worst things he ever saw.
What was so bad?
My dad said that he saw people jumping off the ship, that it was terrible knowing that thousands of people died right in front of him.
Did he save anyone?
Only a couple.
It took 18 minutes to sink. Researchers believed strongly that illegal high explosives in the ship's magazine had probably caused the tragedy. It made perfect sense if the torpedo hit the starboard side of the ship. The explosion ignites the arms and the explosive stacked in the ship's magazine and causes a second explosion. The first note from Wilson was that Americans have the right to be on merchant ships and wanted Germans to abandon submarine warfare against commercial vessels. In the second note, Wilson said that the Germans acted illegally and he was seeking reassurance that no such action would occur in the future. In this note, Wilson warned the German government that any future infringement of the U.S. rights would be deemed deliberately unfriendly.
When the German Kaiser announced on January 31, 1917, that U-boats would sink all ships in British waters, whether they were hostile or neutral, there seemed little choice but to enter the war.
This was a huge contributing factor to the U.S. joining the war because they were very mad at the Germans for sinking an important ship with a lot of Americans on it. Wilson was so angered, he came out with some notes to give Germany. One of them told to stop submarine warfare, but the Germans didn't listen. They kept attacking any ships, neutral or not. This obviously made the President of the United States mad, and he kept in the back of his mind the couple years until they joined the war. The German U-boats were a big reason the Americans joined the war.